Today marks 100 days of the Trump administration, and those 100 days have been characterized by chaos, confusion, and higher costs for you. They've looked like this.
The American public is not happy with the way he has handled the economy.
Prices have risen for lots of foods, but the
new numbers from the deadly measles outbreak.
Pentagon officials are voicing that.
This is the worst performance for a first 100 days of the president since Richard Nixon.
So let me break down these impacts. First, let's look at the economy. Donald Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs, his reckless policy of imposing uniform tariffs around the world, and then greater tariffs on this country, and then reduced tariffs on that country, his effort to cut separate deals, all of this has created economic confusion, driving the markets down, driving your retirement savings down, and driving up, according to most economists, the chance that Donald Trump will push the country into recession. It is hard to imagine a worse 100 days than the first 100 days of this administration and its handling of the economy. He has also laid off scores of people and then been forced to rehire them. This is, of course, the work of Elon Musk and Doge and the Doge Bros. So they've laid off scores of people, they froze all federal funds, and then one court after another said, no, that's illegal, that's unlawful. They've had to reverse a lot of these cuts. They've had to go back and try to hire people they've laid off. They fired a bunch of folks that knew nuclear security and then had to go to try to rehire them again. They fired avian flu experts and then had to go try to rehire them again. They're still laying off forest firefighters. So we've had the additional economic and human impacts of these mass on-again, off-again layoffs. Far from creating efficiency, Doge has been the most profound example of inefficiency and waste. Frankly, if Doge were going to do the country a favor, it would Doge itself. Beyond the work of Doge, you also have the Republican tax cut bill. So all of these cuts and layoffs, these are designed to raise revenues for a massive tax cut for super wealthy people. Among other things on the chopping block, $880 billion for Medicaid. That is $880 billion for your health care, to keep your local hospital open, to keep your local clinic open, to make sure you have health insurance or your neighbor has health insurance. Cutting Medicaid would be disastrous for the country, and that is where they hope to get a huge amount of the money they need for the tax cuts for the wealthy. Of course, it's not just cutting health care. They're also closing down Social Security offices so that when you try to get your check, there's nobody there to answer the phone. According to Elon Musk, Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. Well, that program that Elon Musk is disparaging, is denigrating, is a lifeline for millions and millions of Americans, and more than that, it is their hard-earned savings. So this is how Donald Trump has handled the economy. Now let's look at how Donald Trump is impacting the rule of law. This is essentially his strategy.
He is interested in two things, and two things only: making you afraid of it and telling you who's to blame for it.
He is creating a climate of fear. He is going after individuals and institutions in the most lawless and corrupt way. Within the Justice Department itself, a department I served almost 6 years with, they have turned that department into a vehicle to protect the president's friends and go after the president's political enemies. So they dismiss a serious corruption case against the mayor of New York because he's useful to them on unrelated immigration policy. They go after prosecutors in the Justice Department who refuse to threaten criminal charges when there is no evidence to support such charges. In addition to these corrupt actions of the Justice Department, they're going after universities, threatening to withhold billions and billions of dollars of research funding unless these universities are willing to sacrifice academic freedom and adopt their right-wing cultural warfare agenda. What this means is that the historic partnership between the government and research institutions is being broken. That partnership has come up with cures for cancer. It's come up with amazing technological innovations. It has powered our economy, and Donald Trump has been using his first 100 days to go after one university after another university after another. It's not just the universities they're going after. They're using the attack on the rule of law to go after the law firms itself, coercing law firms, threatening their access to the courthouses, threatening their clients with loss of security clearances. They're doing everything they can to chill the legal profession. They're going after members of the press to curb freedom of speech. They're excluding reporters who don't use the president's preferred crazy Gulf of America language. One by one, they are attacking our institutions in the most corrupt manner, breaking down the rule of law. Now let's look at the 100 days and what it's meant in terms of the foreign policy of the United States of America. First, it begins with the betrayal of our ally, the betrayal of Ukraine. Ukrainians who have sacrificed so much blood and treasure to defend their country against the Russian onslaught. It resulted in this disastrous meeting, this one.
To dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war,
you're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards.
Between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky, when the president and vice president teamed up on our ally to badger and denigrate and belittle our ally, and in the process only belittled and denigrated themselves and the United States of America. They have changed sides in the middle of this war, betraying our democratic ally and embracing the Kremlin. They have blamed Ukraine for the start of the war, a terrible slander. They are trying to coerce Ukraine into accepting a settlement that forces it to give up its lands, give up any potential of joining NATO, essentially a wish list for the Kremlin. In the process, the administration has also, in these 100 days, alienated all of our NATO allies, but probably alienated no ally more than Canada. The president's nonsensical but recurrent campaign to make Canada a 51st state has accomplished nothing but to anger one of our closest allies, to the point where the only electoral success that Donald Trump can now claim since his own election is electing a liberal prime minister in Canada, a prime minister whose chances of election were minimal until Donald Trump chose to pick a fight with one of our closest allies. All of this has made America less safe. You also have incompetent people running our foreign policy and national security infrastructure. You have a Secretary of Defense engaged in using his Signal app on his phone to text military strike plans against Yemen, threatening potentially the lives of pilots and others engaged in those military strikes, as well as threatening sources, human or signals, responsible for the intelligence this country depends upon. You have the Doge Bros sending unclassified emails to the White House with a list of personnel at the CIA. All of this, the incompetence, the arrogance, the alienation of allies, makes our country, makes all of you less safe. The utter destruction of USAID, the diminishment of the State Department has meant that we are abandoning the field. We have abandoned the field in terms of development assistance, humanitarian assistance, the promotion of democracy, and China is filling the void. The loss of USAID personnel around the world, the loss of that support for efforts to combat disease and hunger will result in potentially millions of people losing their lives. This is among the most disastrous consequences of the changes the president has made to the foreign policy of the United States, all to the benefit of some of our adversaries like China. Now let me turn to perhaps the most existential threat the country faces, and that is climate change. What has the president done in his first 100 days? Well, he has done in this respect just what he promised to do. That is just what he promised the oil companies that he would do at one of those big campaign fundraisers he had with oil executives, in which they contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to his campaign. And that is, he's taken action after action to eviscerate our environmental protections. 31 executive orders designed to allow people to more easily pollute our air and water. The effort to stop and eradicate renewable energy projects. The president has claimed that he's for energy independence. This is not true. He is for oil dependence, oil and gas dependence. He wants the United States, indeed the rest of the world, to be dependent on these fossil fuels that are polluting our environment, that are resulting in more severe fires, longer fire seasons, more flooding, worse hurricanes, worse tornadoes, a greater inability for you to purchase home insurance for you and your family. This is what Donald Trump is doing in his first 100 days on the environment. But you can't discuss the president's first 100 days in office without talking about the rampant corruption, without talking about the presidential meme coin, how he's cashing in, his kids are cashing in, even Melania with her meme coin is cashing in, Elon Musk, all of the conflicts of interest, his self-dealing, trying to get government contracts for Starlink, even as he is firing employees who are doing investigations of his companies. The self-dealing, the potential insider trading is among the worst corruption in history, and it's still only 100 days, which just goes to point out how important it is that we have one attribute in the Oval Office that we are missing, and it is this one.
Being president of this country is entirely about character.
That's right. We have a president with an utter lack of character. I suppose that's what you get when you elect a convicted felon to the Oval Office. You get 100 days of corruption and criminality. So where has the vice president been in all this? Well, J.D. Vance's first 100 days in office have been characterized by the usual sycophancy he has demonstrated towards Donald Trump. Someone he once imagined might turn into the first American Hitler, he is now all too happy to serve in every way, including in that horrendous embarrassment of a meeting with Zelensky in the Oval Office. So that's the first 100 days. Damage to our economy, that hurts you in your pocketbook. Prices that continue to rise. Damage to our foreign policy and national security. The loss of important allies, the alienation of friends. An attack on the rule of law. The use of the Justice Department as a sword and a shield for friend and foe. The attack on universities, the attack on civil society, the effort to create a climate of fear. The undermining of our environment, making it even more vulnerable to the ravages of climate change and rampant corruption. It's been a tall agenda for the first 100 days, heavy on things that Donald Trump can do for himself and his rich friends, light on anything for you.